All right, Joe. Why? I mean, this would be my standout track as well. But like, why is it
I was
mostly
thinking so
material?
too.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the hit, if you like. It's the radio friendly ish song. So obviously, I mean, I really like the kind of the play on words. She's calling herself an immaterial girl. There's
Yeah.
the thing against Madonna's Material Girl.
Oh yeah.
And because Sophie's music is kind of about everything and nothing. She released a collection of songs once called Product. It's just a really, really, really fun song, but also in the context of the album, I know I pick an individual song, but in the context of the album, it comes straight after Pretending, I think it might be called.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And which is a very, very slow, aqueous kind of barely something you'd call a song. It's almost more like a bridge between tracks. And then once you've finished listening to Pretending, Immaterial just pops off with the hand claps. It just gets going, and it's a kind of, okay, now we're back. Now we're running on full steam again. Even though I wanted to bring this album in to talk about the album as the context of an album, if there is one song that you're going to listen to, that's the one that's going to draw people in, if you like.
That's a good reason to choose it as a standout. I think a lot of times people choose the standout because it's maybe the most memorable or because it's the one that they have like the closest relationship with. But I think like building it from that angle, building it from like an entry point angle is that's a sound argument.
If that's the thing you can do with Sophie. Yeah, I know we've talked a lot already about what music means to people personally, and I mentioned about I'm trying to do that in my writing and so on, but I do think this album, I just love it, and I'm not sure I can kind of contribute in a way and say, well, actually this helped me through this time, or this reached me at the right time, or anything. I just think it's a really great album. And I think, you mentioned in your intro, there was a music critic who said some really good things about it. I can't remember who it was, but
there's writing out there. Yeah, maybe we'll link to it.
Yeah, actually, you say that. I wondered if you were going to bring this up because, and I don't know if this goes against, this one goes to 11 sort of convention, but because I've written a review of this album, which is out there in the world, and just casually mentioned, if you go to the Wikipedia page for this album, my name's in there somewhere. I've already given this album a score before.
And yes, it was 9 out of 10.
And it was 9, yeah. And now I'm bringing it here to say that it's 11.
Well, but I mean, I sort of think that whenever a reviewer ever gives an album full marks, I mean, I've heard stories about like when the people at Pitchfork, when they were going to give Fiona Apple's Fetch the Bolt Cutters the full 10 out of 10. There was a meeting was had to determine like, can we really do this? Because it's a bold statement. And I honestly think that something we're learning for most of these albums that we've talked about is that the staying power is part of what kicks them up to 10 or 11, because if they last, then they reach that. You don't know you're seeing or hearing perfection right away, and if you do, then I don't know, maybe you've like seen the Ark of the Covenant or something. I don't know. This is lapsed Catholic over here making biblical references, but I don't know.
So you've come to my defense there better than I could myself, I think. So thank you.
Yeah,
hey, I do my best. Yeah,
and you're also a crack segue creator, because this lends itself well to. You sent us a capacious list. It was I think I've used that word twice today, but it was a list, more than 4 albums you sent us. I want to know more about what your standards were for these albums qualifying as perfect. Like, what was we talked about a 10 out of 10 scale, but what were the standards for an album becoming perfect in your eyes?
That's such a good question. And I think it's probably different for each of the albums that I chose, because for this one, like I've said, it's because of how different it is. Because I think my personal opinion is that she is the most important and inventive artist of the 21st century in terms of how she has changed and influenced music, pop and dance music specifically. And,
no big deal.
And just casually throw that in there. It's quite a big statement, as I've said that.
I love it. Yeah,
and you can kind of hear that today. And we've mentioned Brad and so on, and that is what we're sort of seeing now, and she was so ahead of the curve. But that's certainly not the case for other records that I mentioned.
You can name check a few of them if you'd like.
Yeah,
we love that. Yeah.
Okay, so one of them was More Adventurous by Rilo Kiley.
I love Rilo Kiley. There was Jenny Lewis. I'm a Jenny Lewis stan. If there's anybody I stan.
Yeah, if there's anyone. Yeah.
He's great.
I was 18 when that album came out, and I think Jenny Lewis is almost exactly 10 years older than me. I think.
Okay.
I've not fact checked this, but I love that album when it came out, and I listened to it a lot, and I thought it was great. And then I listened to it again when I was the age that Jenny Lewis was when it came out, and it was an entirely different record. Yeah, there's just stuff on there about sort of potentially impending parenthood and like what happens when your friends are having starting to have kids, and just kind of, you know, relationships, and it just hit me completely differently.
Yeah.
And then, not that I nominated this, but then at that time, that is when the Voyager, I think, came out, the Jenny Lewis solo record.
Yeah.
And I think I'm now the age that Jenny Lewis was when the Voyager came out.
So you're due for a re-listen.
Yeah, and so I am. That's literally just occurred to me. So there's she writes in, it's a very unshowy way, just really, really sort of gets to the heart of things better than almost anyone else I can think of. Who else do I have on my list?
So some staying power there. I think is kind of sounds like that's an underpinning of your argument there for that album's perfection.
You had Pulp on the list, which I feel like we can whenever we talk about them, we'll have to be with also someone from the UK, because I feel like we just don't understand them the same way that y'all understand them.
I agree.
So that if you put a gun to my head, which is a terrible idea for a podcast, but don't worry, we're not going to do that. Yeah. And also quite difficult over Zoom. But that would be, if you said, you know, what is your favorite album ever? It would be that. Different
That's
Class.
the one, huh? Okay.
And I was too young, really, when that came out. I think I was 9 when the album came out. That says something about Britishness and the class system. I mean, it's called Different Class. I mean, it's a title that works on multiple levels, right? It's different class just means great. That's different class. That's brilliant. But it's also them saying they are, you know, they're not from the same class as a lot of people. It's really, really interesting. Like, I mean, obviously you guys will know the song Common People, and that's the one everyone sort of goes to. Of
course.
But I find that really interesting, and that is a song that's a real kind of like underdog song. So I actually, for the first time ever, I saw Pulp earlier this year, which was the first time I've ever seen them, and it was incredible. Sydney. No, I saw them in Barcelona. I went to Primavera.
Oh, you did? Okay, great.
Yes. Having thousands of people sing along to different to Common People is really, really transformative. But at the same time, there's a voice in the back of my head going, well, hang on, this is a song about, you know, not being with the masses. This is a song about being an underdog. It's quite strange for that to have become just an anthem, if you like. You need to, if you want to talk to someone British about it, you need to get Matt Risby back on. He's lived in Sheffield for God knows how long now. So that's
twist our arm, you know. We hated talking to him before.
Oh, yeah, I could tell. Yeah, I could tell with that episode being 20 minutes longer than all your others.
Roasted.
And also, yeah. Also, he knows about baseball, and I don't as much. But yeah,
he does. I love that about him.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about it. So it sounds like we have this staying power thing. We have this emotional connection. Kind of Pulp being your favorite album. How does so we've talked a lot about her influence. How does this album qualify as perfect in your mind by those same standards that you were using to assess the other ones?
I'm almost being a bit too music criticky about it, because the word influential is just so kind of isn't it, when you see that written by music critics, and it normally means not very good, but other people formed a band because of it. It's, you know, but I think
does it mean that? Do I agree with that? I may not agree with that. At least in this context, because I think when maybe it's just the fact that we're on the other side of it, that we can already see the influence.
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe I'd painted myself into a corner then, because I realized, as I said, not very good. I was going to be unable to give examples. But I think when people, not that I'm saying this is a not very good album, but when people talk about, say, the Velvet Underground, and Nico, that's an album that legend has it. Nobody bought at the time, but everyone who did went on and formed a band, and that kind of became the standard for things to come. And the fact that you're only now starting to really, really hear the impact of Sophie and of this album. I do listen to a lot of music. I try and be very Catholic, not in the way you've been talking about with my musical tastes. So it's quite unusual for me to hear something that makes me go, what the hell is this? But in a good way. There's a lot of music that is important to me and speaks to me and says something about who I am.
Mm-hmm.
This probably doesn't. I think I would struggle to say, I don't identify as an immaterial girl personally. I mean, something like It's Okay to Cry being that sort of vulnerable when you haven't been in the past. I think that's something that everyone can hopefully relate to. But some of the other songs that, the lyrics are kind of around capitalism and consumerism and things like that. Can I just say I really like it? I think it's great.
Yeah, you should. I think.
Yeah.
it would be crazy if you didn't.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I do wonder when. I guess maybe this is sort of like we're winding down here, but like, what's the ideal listening scenario for this album? Because I will say this was not an easy listen. Like, I mean, I'm not challenging. There's not like a knock to the album. It's just sort of it pivots so hard and so fast that like you can be sort of like lulled into this sort of like beautiful soundscape one moment, but then suddenly like the rusty knives come clashing down at some point and you're like like what's happening. So I guess I don't know, is it a listen to straight through? Like, what's the occasion for listening to this album for you?
I think smoking jacket, glass of brandy, cigarillo. That's a really, really good question.
Or is it sort of like, I don't know, this just popped in my head, like, is this album like more like walking into the modern wing of an art museum where you're sort of,
that's brilliant,
like that's how you're experiencing it? So you got one moment where there's something that's got some sort of photorealistic element to it, but then the next moment it's like a Jackson Pollock, and then it's constantly appealing to you in a different way. So it's not all one thing, it's not all one message, but it all does have that sort of like, I'm just thinking because of when you said when you saw Sophie perform, and it sounded a lot more like performance art to me than just a concert. So
no, I think again you've done this better than I can. It's I think you're spot on there. That thing about modern art collection in a museum is probably a good way of describing it. I think it's because you can't say this is an album for this specific occasion. I think you need to be mentally prepared. I think you need you need to
it requires some focus.
I listen to this quite regularly for an album as old as it is, but I think you have to be thinking, okay, right, I'm feeling relatively open-minded and I'm prepared for what's about to happen. I've made all the necessary precautions. I have an emergency contact. Some of the really kind of upbeat tracks, I think, well, this would be great to run to. Like I run quite often and so on, but then you couldn't put this album on because within 2 tracks time you've got this kind of slow, kind of meandering track that's going to. Oh no, that's such a good question. When do I listen to
maybe the slow tracks, it's actually a perfect workout album in that Sophie is guiding you when you should slow things down a little bit, like getting a true cardio experience. So.
Maybe it's a circuit training record rather than a running record.
Intervals,
I'm interval training, which I'm sure that was her intention. I'm sure she'd be delighted if she could have had this conversation. But one thing I think she does want is for you to always be giving it your attention.
Yeah,
I think there is, like you say, you can't switch off for this, and if you do, you'll be caught out pretty soon. As you say, the rusty knives will come for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a good time for us to go to the deliberation phase. There's so much gold here. I got a lot of a lot of carrots, a lot of potatoes in the stew, and as Carl Weathers would say. Michael, do you feel ready to move to the deliberation phase?
I think so, but I think you're gonna have to go first. I'm still sort of.
I will.
Putting together my thoughts here. So
yeah, I have a few things I want to articulate. So should we go with sound effect?
There we go.
Okay. Here's what I'm hearing, and that I think Joe's touched on something that maybe none of our other guests have thus far, that I think is in the spirit of the album. And it's that you've almost chosen an album that is objectively perfect. You may be the first person to ever make the case that an album is objectively perfect without kind of leaning on their own personal experience with it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I do, but I was really hoping to not do it.
No, but I think it works.
Like though. I've been too music criticky about it, and I'm institutionalized. Okay.
No, but I mean,
it's your show,
this is about us wanting to feel like you've shared yourself in your story, and you definitely have done that. The mixed feelings about the Spice Girls, you can see the seeds being planted. For why this album and why you would have a popiphany at the point in your life that you did. All of the hallmarks of a personal connection to this particular kind of music, this particular album, they're all there, but you've also just managed to make the case for why this is objectively perfect. So I'm remembering you talking about sort of like the ends of the spectrum of, something that has commercial appeal, something that is quote unquote good, quote unquote quality music, important music, but also figuring out why that means something to you at all, understanding yourself in a way that music has a unique ability to do so. And I think that you expounded on why this album checks a lot of those boxes. Influence is huge, and I think we can't understate the speed at which Sophie became influential, because I think that adds to this case as well. The fact that she burned so bright that we're already seeing sort of where her fingerprints are. And also this album is the kind of album that makes you question, like, what does pop music become now as we move into a more sci-fi kind of future? Because it's only going to get crazier and more sci-fi like what does... Yeah, exactly.
More beeps and boops. Yeah.
This is perhaps the beepiest boopiest album that we've spoken about up to this point.
I think that was on the poster for the album, wasn't it? The beepiest boopiest album you'll hear this year.
It has to be. We haven't talked a whole lot because it's in some ways kind of a boring thing because there's so many unknowns to consider, but we haven't talked a lot about how AI music is going to manifest itself in the coming years. But I think it's a scary conversation, and you can kind of see maybe Sophie saying something about that with this record. And so the fact that this album gives us a glimpse into the future in a scary but not entirely unhopeful way, that all adds to a pretty solid argument. Michael, what's going on in your stew?
I mean, two things. One, I think referencing the time that you saw Sophie perform and the way that performance happened, like sort of clicked everything together for me, because I was sort of like, once I understood Sophie as more of a performance artist, I didn't do enough research to know whether or not Sophie even embraced the title of hyperpop. Something tells me that Sophie probably wouldn't have been a huge fan of that. Maybe I don't know.
I'm not sure if she ever really said anything either way, but I'm with you. I don't think that's something she would have latched onto.
So I think that, like, describing that performance kind of crystallized some things for me. But also, frankly, I just sort of think this entire conversation, the way we've sort of like ebbed and flowed and hard pivoted a few times, it kind of feels like we've done our own, like, white nerdy guys version of like the sort of the experience of the album in some ways. Because I think like I don't think this feels... I'm going to go against what Tyler said. I don't know that you've necessarily made an objective case, because I sort of feel like you've touched on lots of things without like going straight down the middle in terms of what this album is about. And to me, that feels like I feel like Sophie would be pleased.
Oh, yeah. That's no greater compliment.
Them's my thoughts. So,
Michael,
so Tyler, I'll put it to you. We've heard Joe's case.
This means you have to say the name of the album too. So there you go. Joke's on you.
Damn it! Why do you do that? we've heard Joe's case.
Yeah.
We've listened to the album as well as probably some other tracks over the course of this week. We've had a great conversation, not to, show my hand or anything like that, but I don't know. What do you think, Tyler? Is Sophie's Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides a perfect album? Does it go to 11?
It totally does.
Vindication. Incredible.
Add it to the pantheon.
Okay, I have a few people to thank.
Great.
Okay, yes.
No.
Music's already playing.
Sorry,
Music's already playing.
Yeah, so playing you out. Yeah.
You've got to a commercial. Yeah.
No, this is great.
Fantastic.
I also want to make mention of this how commendable it is that, because you haven't mentioned the name of your podcast, the Quarantine the Past podcast, which we'd love to give you an opportunity to plug that as well. Maybe I'm just doing that for you right now. But the conceit of that pod is to introduce people who may not be plugged into the tides of new music, to give them a way to learn about new music on a regular basis, right?
So the way we describe it sometimes is the podcast for people who think the 90s were 10 years ago, because the target audience, I guess, is people. Yeah, I think the term for us now is geriatric millennials, which is a horrible way of putting it. But
terrible.
I know. But basically, people born in the 80s and earlier who still love the music of their youth, but still have that kind of fire in them to want to find something new, basically. Yeah. And we don't just say, "Hey, here's a record, it's good, listen to it." We say, but if you're a fan of the Pixies and still listen to them a lot, or if you are looking for some post-punk and you don't know where to find it anymore because you have a mortgage now, then we can kind of just gently steer you in the right direction. I do contribute to that. I am often the comic relief, in as much that because of this pop-iphany and the fact that I listen to a lot of soul music, there is a running joke that all I do is listen to Sade, and therefore only recommend extremely smooth music and dance music and non-serious music. But
nothing wrong with listening to Sade.
You're welcome at our
among
dinner.
Friends.
You're welcome at our dinner party anytime.
Just don't bring the Sophie album. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not Sophie is not dinner party music.
No.
You can say that. Yeah. But I think it's a really great project you guys have going, and we can't wait to maybe try to convince your co-hosts to come and make their case.
Say. Yes, they really should. Yeah, they would all three of them, Gabby, David, and Juan are the three other co-hosts, and they've all been dedicated too much of their lives to thinking about music and writing about this kind of stuff. So
awesome.
So none of them are in Australia though, so you don't get to tick off any more countries, unfortunately.
No, but I can meet Juan though, right? He's in LA.
He is. Yeah. He is in LA. Yeah.
Okay, great. Good to know. Joe, thank you so much for this. We couldn't be more pleased that Matt made mention of you on the podcast. Any friend or family member of Matt's is obviously a friend or family member of ours now.
Oh, you haven't met the rest of our family, but yes, okay, that's good to know.
We'll find out. Thank you so much for doing this. It was a really great time.
Oh no, thank you for having me.
And dear listeners, if you're not already following us in all the places and liking us or starring us, I don't even know what all the things are anymore, but
leave a review.
Leave a review or give us 5 stars on Spotify, or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, our YouTube channel, or
TikTok.
That's where you can find out all the happenings in the This One Goes to 11 sphere.
And if you know somebody out there who you think might make a great case for an album, email us, DM us something. We want to talk to them.
Yeah, slide into our DMs, but
we're open for business.
All right.
Thank you for listening, y'all. We love you.